Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of what we're calling right now the Daily Grind Press live stream. We'll come up with a better name in the future. Uh, this is my good friend, co-business owner, partner, editor, letterer, and best friend, Max Weston, creator of Welcome to Blue Water and Wavelight. And myself, I am Lunchbox Warren, owner of Lunchbox Comics and the creator of The Adventures of Sig and Joe. The future coming down the road is the Day the Realm Stood Still and some other things along those lines. Max, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm good, and Warren, you're being too humble. He's also the looks and the brain and the brawn of this entire operation. So,
well, I just no reason to state the obvious. Now, one other question right here, a technical question. When I type into the comments, is it showing up on your Facebook too? I wonder. Or is it just, if people watching? I wonder. Anyways, if yeah,
I am seeing no.
I saw your mom commented, but I commented in the comments and I don't know if she saw it or not. So that's one thing that I got to keep an eye on, see if it's showing up on the Facebooks. Let's see here. No, they're not on mine. So okay. Anyways, hello folks. We're in here for another live stream. We're streaming to excuse me, dropped my phone. Facebook, to YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Today we're going to be working on our comic books. I'll be working on issue 3 of The Adventures of Sig and Joe. I redid a bunch of the pages, turned it from a 41-page book to a 55-page book. And right now I'm going over I like to call it like the second pass on my pencils and just straight get everything all tightened up, more detail put in, and get it ready for inking. What are you going to be working on today, Max?
I am going to be working on more of Blue Water issue 1. So I am seeing everybody's comments. Hi, Mr. Dale. Hi, Lonnie. You guys are awesome. Thank you for watching. And seeing them all on the StreamYard. But what I'm gathering is that since we're both streaming to our own Facebook page, whatever stream they're commenting on, that's where it shows up.
Okay, cool.
So you probably won't see Mr. Dale or Lonnie, but I probably won't see Ichthy. What's up, Total Excellence?
I see the Dale ones on the comment section, but I don't see it on the Facebook. So yeah, at least I know they're there. Hello, Dale. Hello, Lonnie. Itchy5, what's up? Color and Crazy Man.
Thank you guys for tuning in and hanging out.
Let's see here. Which one am I going to see here? Pull up some. What's up, Phil, man?
Phil.
All right, so here is the things that I'm working on. Okay, so yours pops up on Max's. Okay, cool. Well, at least we know now, so then that way I can just address it, try it instead of trying to type in there. So that'll work out.
Yeah, we'll just have to keep an eye on the main hub here.
Yeah. So right now, like I said, I'm getting ready to go back over the pencils for one of the pages here. Oof. Let's see here. Oh no, that's the wrong button. I almost left the studio. There. Okay. Yeah, when I first started, it would take me like 5 or 6 passes and to sometimes get this stuff right. Now I'm doing about 2, and I'm pretty much ready for inking then.
Justin Young asks, what program are you using?
I am using the latest version of Clip Studio. And I use it for my comic book. I use it for everything: penciling, inking, and grayscaling. I am thinking I would go to use pencil, like on a regular paper, but it just takes more time. This saves a lot of time doing it this way.
And since I do all the lettering, I am pretty much exclusively in Illustrator.
Yeah, you can use Clip Studio for lettering, but the way you learn from more of the pros, and the pros are using old school, is more of the Photoshop method, right?
Yes, sir. Pretty much everything I know about the process of lettering, I've learned from Mr. Nate Picos of Blambot. I've actually got 2 copies of this book because I wanted one with an autograph. But to
Let me
anybody
pull
who
you
is
up on the
interested,
main screen here so that way they can see the book.
oh, I think hold on, I am being mirrored. Boom. There. No, that didn't do it. Oh, you know what? It helps if I just hold the thing upright. So, yeah, I bought 2 of these because the guy is just such an amazing contributor to the indie comic scene. He has his whole website. It's blambot.com. He gives away free fonts that the guy has created. And this book taught me everything I needed to know about how to use Illustrator, how to streamline the process. Yeah, he lays it all out so that pretty much all that's left is your imagination and your graphics design skills. But yeah, like I said, I can't recommend it enough. You can find it on Amazon. I think you can find it on his website too, blambot.com. He uses great examples for all kinds of different things, from off-screen speakers to narrations to just the standard kind of protocols for different situations that you'll run into. Things like don't cross tails, and then he just kind of gives you like a deep dive on more of his skills and the things that he's learned, and gives you a lot to kind of borrow from. So yeah, if you're interested at all, The Ultimate Guide to Comic Book Lettering by Nate Picos of Blambot, and definitely go check out blambot.com. He's a godsend for indie comics. That's all I can say.
And Dale, I am using a Julian tablet where I'm drawing directly onto the tablet. Here's the stylus pen. Julian is they're like the Wacom's, but not quite as sensitive as a Wacom. But it's for what I'm using it for. It's more than good enough. Let's see here. Oh, and Itchy Five. Just we are live on YouTube, but we're on our new YouTube channel, Daily Grind Press YouTube. Can we get a link for that into the chat? I wonder where it would show up at.
Yeah, let me figure that out real quick.
Okay, we'll try to get a link up there for you. Everyone loves free fonts, Lonnie. What's up, Justin? How's it going, Moby? Oh, we got a nice little crowd today. This is awesome.
You guys are awesome. We love all of you.
Yeah,
Thank you for
every one of
us.
you. All right. One of the things we were going to talk about today is recently I have gotten multiple print runs done from Comics Wellspring, and I'm currently waiting to get the first of the orders in. They should be being printed right now, and I imagine mailed off anytime now. And we were going to talk about a little bit of the process that I had to go through and what you got to go through to get stuff printed. And with our limited knowledge, I mean, I've only gone through 2 different companies to get stuff printed on. So far, Comics Wellspring has been a really, really great customer service company. They were bogged down a little bit this time because they're doing now it's con season. So there's a lot of stuff going on. But even if there's a problem with it, it took a couple emails and I was good to go and on the right track. I got 3 variant covers, one done by Pete Vasquez. Shout out to Pete. And then the other 3 were done by me and colored by Phil Leon, who is in the chat. Anyone that needed some color work, go ahead and check out Phil Leon. He does color and work for me. Also, Itchy Five is a colorist too. So we got two pro colorists in the chat right now. I'll let you guys fight over who who they get to go to, and then yeah, I mean, it's an interesting process. First things up, if you're going to get something printed and you're on a timetable, give yourself plenty of time to get the job, get it printed and get it to you, because sometimes it can take a bit when you're doing a physical proof, and then they got to mail that to you. And then if there's any problems, you got to go through an email process, and if they email you the corrections in digital, like if you want another hard proof, you got to wait for that to come in the mail. I went for digital proof on the corrections, so they sent me a physical. There was some stuff wrong. Then I said, this is what's wrong. Send me a digital proof to show me that you fixed it. And that came in an email on Friday, and there was still some stuff wrong. So then I had to wait till Monday. So, if it could take a couple weeks, to get everything all together, and then after that, it even it takes them 5 or 6 days to print the order, depending on how big it is, and then from there they got to mail it to you. So if you're doing a Kickstarter along those lines, sometimes I guess it takes up to a couple weeks to get your money after the Kickstarter's done. Give yourself plenty of window to get your books printed, because it could take a month and a half to get them back to you through the whole process, depending on what's going on.
The big part of it's just planning ahead and anticipating those kind of delays. And that's one of those things you just learn as you go, kind of.
Yeah, I had no time schedule on mine because I'm just getting them printed for my own inventory. So that was kind of nice. Plus, too, I wanted to go through having a print run. I didn't want to do like a Kickstarter or have to do a print run on a time schedule. I never had done it before. That would have been a real pain. I had prints done through Mix'em, and that was real quick and painless. Just had to set the prints up and then send it off, and those are pretty. That was pretty quick. Let's see here. Check the chat real quick. It's 85 will fight to the death with his digital crayon.
Yes.
Work backwards from when you need it. Yep, that is true. Oh, you are welcome. And here is, hold on here. Here is the YouTube page. If you guys could give that one a like and a subscribe, that would be great. What's up, Tim? Tim Lee Olson in the house. How you doing? All right. Let's see here. Try to mouse. Yeah, that takes time to coordinate that. I had those one of those deals where you draw on the pad and then you look up at the screen, and that I was able to figure it out, but it took me some time to get used to that. Heck, even drawing on Clip Studio, from just going from Procreate on the iPad to Clip Studio, took me a while. Almost probably, I think, about a year and a half to get really comfortable, so where I could do looser pencils on the Clip Studio. Before, I couldn't do it. My whole art style stiffened up.
This is that very same Wacom tablet that Warren was talking about. I've had this thing for years now.
Is that it? Is that the one? Oh,
yep.
Wow.
So this is the one you sold this to Amador, and then I bought it from Amador because he didn't want to look at up at the screen either. So this is kind of the thing. It's just a really sensitive pad, just like a touchpad or anything, and it has the pen that goes with it. This one you have to lay down and actually look up at the screen as you're drawing. The one that Warren's using has a display built in right here, and it'll mirror it acts just like another desktop monitor, and so you can actually look as you're drawing almost like a piece of paper. So they're a little more expensive, but for me this one's more than enough. I almost never use it anymore. It came in handy a lot with Clip Studio when I was first starting out lettering, but I haven't really needed it with Illustrator, you know?
Yeah.
It's holding me back. So eventually I'm going to have to upgrade, kind of like Warren has. But yeah, these things are a great place to start. Lonnie has one too. She says hers is so ancient.
Yeah, if you can't afford the Wacom's, I highly suggest Julian's. Like a 21-inch Julian that I'm using right now, and I think they got a 22-inch out right now. It's like $350 brand new. Compared to a Wacom, if you're gonna get a 20-inch Wacom drawn tablet, you're talking like easily over $1,000. So I don't know how much different the Wacoms are. I don't know if it's kind of like a Harley Davidson. Are you just paying for the name, or is it actually that much better? But I am very happy with Julian myself. I might actually, if I upgrade from this tablet, I might go with a smaller one. I might stick with Julian, but I might go down like to a 16-inch.
Lonnie's rocking the Wacom Bamboo. Yeah, that's old school.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Mine's not even that old, and I feel like mine's just obsolete. Brian makes a great point. Brian Cole, thank you for hanging out. He had a really good comment there. Might be worth throwing up. He's had really good luck with Mix'em, but he does suggest laminating the covers, especially for doing manga sized, because they can scratch. That's that kind of stuff you only learn the hard way, right? Yep. So thank you, man. That's kind of the theme of this, is we've all made some mistakes on this front. So, you know, we want to share the mistakes that we've made and hope other people can avoid them. But yeah, with that, we did cover some of those basics for printing. Yeah, Intuos, that's what I've got too. Heck yeah. But it's worth kind of revisiting some of those basic sort of rules that you'll want to work on before you get your book ready to print. The first one is that your total page count has to be a multiple of 4 because of the way that comic books are printed. They print them out on a big sheet, and they'll print 4 pages on each side of that sheet, and they call that a register. And then once they get all the pages printed out, you're going to have this stack of these 4x4 sheets that are going to each have 1 page on each side, so 8 total. And then they fold them and fold them again, and then they stitch them together, and you've got a book. So you got to make sure that your total count is a multiple of 4, so that they can be printed on those registers and folded out. And it's okay to have blank pages in there, you know, that counts. It's just something to keep in mind. If you have something that's not a multiple of 4, they're probably going to just tag blank pages on the end. So it's best to have your overall design kind of figured out to avoid huge spots with nothing but blank pages in them. The other thing is, if you're doing what they call Phil's been doing his in 3.5. Yeah. He's making it work, right? Because every fourth 3.5 is a multiple of 4 divided by 2.
That's way too
multiplied
much
by pi. So, oh, that's a good point, man. The other big thing is if you're doing what they call a double page spread, where if you're ever read a comic and you open up and both pages of the inside are one solid piece of art, you're going to want to make sure the first page in that double page spread starts on an even number, because when those registers get printed out, what ends up happening is all your evens wind up on the left and all of the odd numbers wind up on the right side. So if the first page of that double page spread is on an even, you'll know you'll be good. When they open it up, it'll start on the left and go to the right, just like it's supposed to. And then beyond that, it's really a matter of making sure that you have your page size set properly. And I think you had that diagram pulled up, right, Warren?
Yeah, I've got, let me show here. So what I got here is, well, the printing company gave me a template to go off of. And this is for the standard size deal, but they have a template for each size that's going on there. And on here there is let's see here, this area here is the area that is going to be trimmed off for sure. this right here between this dotted line and between this solid line is the area that could be trimmed. Most likely part of this will be missing. Inside this dotted line area here is where you're going to find is all of the safe area. So if I'll open up a page here that I'm working on. And what I'm going to do here is let me straighten this out. Clip Studio. I do all my pages on 11 by 17s. And let's see here. I'm going to erase this. So right now, all of the important stuff that's going on in this page is inside the safe area. Right? So actually, you know what? Let me pull up a better thing than that. We'll do the square. So everything that's important needs to be inside essentially this square right here. So when you're formatting your page on there, you need to make sure that everything you want to keep is inside that black square that's on there right there. Now you can go outside of it, and you'll see on some of my pages I do go outside of it. That's area that I don't mind if it gets trimmed up and disappears. Here is the line for the trim area. So everything that goes in between these two squares could be trimmed. Now it could still be there, but that's the area where it could be trimmed up when they do the cutting. The rest on the outside here is the dead zone. That's nothing in that area is going to be kept. I will still draw into that area if I have a page like this one where, let me show this. So this one, hold on, right here. I have my panels, which are inside the safe area, but this third panel, right, let me get so I can draw on it. Right here, I'm having run off all the way to the edges. Now I know this stuff outside in this area, even between here and here, some of this stuff is going to go missing, but it doesn't matter because I want the arc to be going off the page, so it's fine. But all the important stuff, like these guys, the characters talking, the planes, all that stuff is inside that zone. And if you want to make sure all your frames or your boxes show up, make sure that the outside line doesn't go outside of that zone area, or you're going to have a box with no side on it if they trim up that close.
Mr. Phil makes a really excellent point. Do you mind going ahead and pulling up my screen here?
Yep, give me one second, I'll do that.
Thank you, boss. So his the point that Phil made is back to the double page spread. You want to make sure you're not putting any important art or letters near the center of the page. And the reason for that is because it's going to get stitched together. So you're not going to ever be able to fully open that book all the way. There's going to be a part of it that kind of disappears into that binding. And he says, especially if it's perfect bound, which is a great point. The difference between perfect binding and saddle stitching, if you've ever read a comic book, you'll notice that there's like usually 3 staples on the back, and it's almost as if it's just a series of pages that have been folded together, stapled down the middle, and creased. Perfect binding is what most people are familiar with. That's like most novels, even magazines nowadays are usually perfect bound. So the edges are trimmed and they're all glued to a backer, and then you wind up with that sort of square shaped spine that you're used to, which is going to consume even more of that artwork down the middle. And this is hide Easter eggs in the bindings. Yes, that's a good point. You like, yeah. You can hide Russian propaganda in there.
Very topical.
So this is also kind of reflected in the layouts that we use even for double page spreads. It's essentially the layout for a single page spread stacked together. But you'll see the same things that Warren was talking about. This initial blue outline is our safe zone. Then the area between is the trim zone, and anything outside of this final one is the bleed. But you'll notice that we keep those here in the middle to help us keep track of that. Because although this isn't necessarily going to be cut, that's where that stitching is going to happen. And so anything in this area here is, it's forfeit at that point. It's it could stay, it could not. It depends on the thickness of the book, how precisely everything was bound. But the best rule of thumb is if you want it to be visible on the page, you're going to want to keep it inside this area here.
Yep. That the perfect bound is expensive, but there's a payoff. When you're doing a floppy, like for my Sig and Joe issue 1, it's 31. It's 44 pages altogether, counting covers. I'm getting them for $2.50 a piece, and I'm printing out only like 25, 50 runs, but they're around $2.50 a piece. A perfect binding, depending on how the size and the quality, but you're printing those off for like $7-8. I think last time I checked on Comics Wellspring. So, but you can sell a graphic novel for much more than what you can sell floppy. So there is the trade-off on profit margin when you're talking about a perfect bound graphic novel compared to a staple or saddle stitched floppy. Let's see. I was going to show 2 here. I'm going to add up. Bam. Here is a 2-page spread that it's an issue 3. And just like Maxx said, they have the lines in the middle showing what's going to be cut off. And I made sure to keep all of the important stuff, even though the action's going across the page, is in the safe area. So enough, like even if you lose part of his knee here, there's enough going on that you know enough of the robot's head in the safe area. It's kind of a balancing act to try to fit all that in. Here is another one. Bam. This is of them finding a bunch of robots, but both Sig and Joe are inside the safe area. And then you're going to lose some of the detail with the robots here in the middle. But that's okay, though, because what's important is the, Sig and Joe and the action that's going on. But yeah, that's something you got to be mindful of when you're setting up your 2-page spreads, is trying to fit it to where the action and everything is still there, but nothing important is in that middle section. Let's see here. Boof. And then back to this one. And no. Okay, I don't need you anymore. There we go. What's this? Okay, I don't need you. Managing layers is always a pain in the rear. Okay. I don't have to deal with many layers. It's like Phil does. He's got like layers upon layers. I'm like maybe 25 layers at the most when I'm doing Sig and Joe stuff. Let's see.
But yeah, those are kind of the basics. Keep those multiples of 4. Make sure that all your art is within the right spot. Make sure that everything's been kind of pushed down to the right size. Again, I'm gonna plug blambot.com. He's got right on the top, he's got a section called tips, and then there's original art dimensions, and he lays everything out for you. How to trim it down to the right size, what the right sizes are. He even offers Illustrator templates that have everything set up for you. I can't recommend those enough. It's essentially a blank page, and he's built all the layers into it. So you've got layers for sound effects, layers for balloons, layers for dialogue, and then the artwork, the artboard itself has those blue guides set up, and he's done all the work in the background so that all you need to do is export the artwork and everything kind of comes out the way it's supposed to. Because it's focused on lettering, he has that art layer dimmed to about 30% opacity. Label your layers. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. But you don't even have to mess with that. Once you export it, that 30% opacity drops away, and it's the full darkness that it needs to be. But while you're working, that allows you to focus on the lettering rather than the artwork. Those blue guides, they all just disappear. He's done a lot of the groundwork to help indie comics, and he's got
really nice. He does so much for free.
Yeah, he's got a variety of free fonts. And I have probably given that guy, I would say maybe 100, a little over 100 in just fonts. That's not counting the book as well. And the ones that I've had to buy have been worth every penny. He really offers a lot that you wouldn't even think of. If you have, two of the same letter next to each other, one of them will usually appear slightly different. He never lets the same I appear in a row, for instance. And he has a lot of extra little glyphs that are kind of specific to comics built in with little hotkeys. So like if you do a curly bracket on your computer, you're going to wind up with, they call them whisker marks. You see them a lot when guys are whispering, or if they're making sound effects like, choking noises or a sigh, you'll see those little whisker marks on the outside of it. And it's just a way to indicate, this isn't necessarily actual dialogue. It's, an audible noise. But normally you'd have to hand draw those little whisker marks, and he's built it in so you can just curly Q bracket open and closed, type in between, and you're rocking and rolling.
And comics are expensive no matter what you look at it. But I'll tell you right now, having someone who's been studying lettering really helps out a ton with the look of your pages. Having someone who knows what they're doing with lettering. It helps.
I agree. I agree. I hope we can find one of those guys one day.
Yeah, I know. I've been looking. We'll one of these days.
Someday, man. It's hard to find good help.
Yeah, I won't need to do another pass over these ones. This is enough to do the inking. It's like I'm just trying to take away as many, not take away, but essentially like not need nearly as many steps as I've had in the past. Try to cut down on time when I'm drawing. But I'll tell you one thing, though. Don't worry about time and your speed as much or too much, because the speed comes along with just doing it a lot. And you will get faster. Your lines will get more confident as you go along, if that makes sense. No.
So as you've been, using Clip Studio, and you've had this Huion tablet and this setup, for a while now.
Yeah.
Have you found that there's like multiple brushes and assets and stuff that you use, or do you have your chosen few, and you've just learned how to really flex those?
I use the stock ones that come with the program.
There you go.
I don't use 3D elements. I don't use models. I don't use any fancy pens. I'm essentially I use whatever standard pencil, the one I like, which is the mechanical. And I use the G pen. And everything else is just, if I want a brick wall, I just draw out all the bricks. I don't I don't use assets yet. I have been thinking about starting to use some assets, kind of going through them and seeing what I can use. But I don't think I'm ever going to just throw down a building in the background. If anything, I'll use the assets to put the buildings in the background, and then I'll draw over those with pencil in order so that way they don't really look like assets anymore. You essentially just draw over the bare minimum to get the details that I need for the structure, and then I'll go through and fill in the rest of the details just on my own, because then that way you won't be able to tell that I used an asset at all. But
And for those unfamiliar, what we're kind of talking about is in Clip Studio Paint, there are a variety of, they call them assets, but they're essentially like 3D models that you can download and put on a layer. And then, you now have a model, whether it's a person or a building. They have whole scenes with multiple buildings in a street. There are cars, guns, swords. I mean, pretty much anything you can think of. And then you're able to physically manipulate these in three-dimensional space on the page. You can grow them and shrink them. So for somebody like me who couldn't draw to save their life, those assets are great, because if I have a vision in my head and I don't know how to make the perspective work because I'm a terrible artist, or I just haven't
learned yet,
haven't practiced. Yeah, I'm a budding artist in training, we'll say, right? Yeah. Those will allow me to kind of set them and size them accordingly. The problem is that those can become a crutch. If you don't know how to grow out of that, you're essentially stuck tracing. And to anybody who, anybody can tell traced art over organically drawn art. So it's definitely something that you want to avoid relying on.
And I will say this too, like if you're going to be placing 3D buildings in the background, it would be good if you don't know anything about 2-point perspective or 1-point perspective. I would watch a couple YouTube videos to get at least the ground basic rules of it. So then that way, when you place your objects, they fit better. Some people will place 3D assets and it looks like it's not part of the scene, or like they draw their persons and standing on it and it doesn't feel like it's connected, or they're the same world. Some of that can be done by just fixing the perspective and knowing, okay, if the door is here, then the character should be this tall. So that way you're not making your character look like they're like 10 feet tall in front of a building, or possibly making them look like they're 5 inches tall. It all depends on how that perspective worked, knowing where the eye line is. So there is some stuff that helps out that you should have basic knowledge of before you start trying to use that stuff too much. But I've seen everyone from pro manga artists and Marvel and DC artists to bottom level people using those assets. I have no problem with them myself. So this is definitely not hating on 3D assets. It's just, it does help out knowing the basics on how to place them, and also the more you know how to do it on paper, the better you have on placing and using those assets.
Yeah, agreed. I don't mean to sound like I'm hating on them at all either. Like I said, I use them a lot too, but if you're really trying to grow as an artist, it's worth being aware that, they can become a crutch. And at that point, they're kind of holding you back, so just something to be aware of. And if you want to check out a really great little workshop on 2 and 3-point perspective, the stream we did last week, Warren does a really good job of kind of breaking that down. And you can watch my mind explode in real time. So, was real time when it happened, but there's a record of it. So go get your mind exploded. And then go out there and make some art.
Heck yeah.
Yes, Lonnie makes a great point. Speed comes with experience.
Yeah, if you try to force speed, your work is going to look rushed. So you need to You need to work at the speed where you can get the best out of your work, and that speed will gain the more and more experience you get, and also the more and more you just spend drawing the characters. If you draw a character, 1,000 times, pretty soon you're going to be able to do it, blindfolded in a dark room, no problem at all. So all that stuff will come with time.
And that's true, like she said, in every aspect. Anything that you're working on, drumming is another thing that I always kind of go back to. I play a lot of death metal drumming. It's real fast, and you see people doing that, and you're like, wow, that's insane. But what you don't see are the hours of them starting out slow. They find a maximum speed where everything is still nice and clear, and it's maybe half the speed that they're actually going for. But they get to where they can keep that nice and clear, and everything sounds clean at 120 BPM, beats per minute. Then they bump it up to 125. And once they can get 125 to sound good, they can bump it up to 130, or maybe even just 127, But the idea is you slowly work up to the speed you need, and before you know it, you're blast beating at 200. But it takes time and practice. You force it too much with something like drumming, you can actually wind up hurting yourself because of bad technique. But those same kind of setbacks can be applied to art.
I strained my hand so bad that I was in a brace, and I thought I had broke something, like the way my joints were hurting, because I was holding my pencil too hard and I was pushing myself too hard, trying to go faster and do more work. And I ended up hurting myself pretty good. I think I quit drawing for like a week because of that. Didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, you're good. Yeah, Lonnie, I've watched you on Facebook for years as a dog groomer, and seeing the stuff you do was amazing. And what you do now, you probably definitely couldn't have done, when you were still learning. And dog grooming, when I worked in a dog boarding and daycare facility, we had a dog groomer, and I didn't realize just how intense of a job that can be, because you got to have all the hairstyling skills, except the thing whose hair you're trying to cut is actively trying to get themselves stabbed in the eye with a pair of scissors. And so you got to be, oh man, you got to know when to pull away and how to work with different dogs who have different temperaments. And that's all just to do the job, and then you got to be able to do the job. So yeah, my hat is off to you. Hey Tony. So I use Illustrator. Yes. Tony's an old bandmate of mine. He's one of my best friends. I miss you.
Oh, nice. What's up, Tony?
I miss you like crazy, bro. Go check out Shinigami. Everybody should be listening to Shinigami right now. Guy's an amazing guitar player, an amazing vocalist, and he's a pretty good bass player too. When he was begrudgingly made to be one, but we had good times tearing it up around DFW back in the day. But yeah, I use Illustrator for lettering, and Mr. Warren here is using Clip Studio Paint, which is actually it's a Japanese program, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it used to be called Manga Studio.
Yeah, so it's geared toward manga artists, but it's just a great program for laying down artwork. Different brushes. They even have a really cool panel tool, so you can lay out panels and then slice them, and you can set the space between two panels is called a gutter. And you can set that gutter size, and all this stuff you can do just with settings, and then you're just hacking and slashing, and boom, you've laid out a bunch of panels. It's really cool.
I don't know how to do any of that either.
Yeah, Silani, here different temperaments, different hair textures, and then adding the color is a whole different battle.
Oh yeah.
You're going for creative. I didn't even know there was such a thing as creative dog grooming. That's awesome.
Oh heck yeah. Good luck.
Yeah, we'll be rooting for you. Let us know when and where. We'll come out there and bring some megaphones and air horns and get ourselves kicked out and arrested on your behalf.
I'll go just grab somebody's dog and have you groom them.
Here, we found this one outside. But no, for real, I think that's a tough job. I've seen firsthand just how hard that job can be. It's very physically and mentally demanding, and you really do a good job at it. The passion, whatever you're doing, if you do it with passion, it's going to be apparent to everybody. I suck at drawing, but what type of Nintendo DS stick is good? You got to get the N64 analog, bro. I suck at drawing too. It's okay, man. But I suck at guitar, and I know that there was a time where you sucked at guitar, and you found what you loved, and you kept doing it over and over, and you do it with passion. You do it because you love it, and the improvements and skills just come with the 10,000 hours.
Yeah, and it's not exactly 10,000 hours because I've got about 10,000 in. I feel like I need about 10,000 more sometimes, but it does help.
Yeah, I use the reason I use Illustrator instead of something like Clip Studio is because of the difference between what is called a vector and what is called a raster image. So raster images are made from pixels, right? They're small squares of individual color values, and when they're all placed together, you get an image. But as anybody who's ever tried to, mess with digital images has probably seen at one time or another, there's a limit to how big or small you can make an image. You eventually it starts just turning it into pixels, and it just gets the quality and the resolution go way down. But if you're dealing with a predetermined size, raster images give you a great amount of detail because of the fact that those pixels can be so small. But you're kind of limited once you set your size and you start drawing. You're fairly limited to whatever resolution you've picked there and whatever total size for that artwork. Vectors, on the other hand, are made from mathematical curves. And the beautiful thing about math is that it stays the same, right? So using mathematical curves to determine where the image is laid out, it gives you infinite resolution. So it's great for logos, especially. If I build a logo as a vector image, all mathematical curves, I can make that same image small enough to fit on a business card or big enough to cover the entire side of a building. And I won't lose any of that resolution along the way. I'll never get that pixel effect. The downside is that because of the nature of the mathematical curves, there's a limit to the finer details. Vectors don't do well with sharp, jagged points. They don't do well with things crossing back over too much, especially if it starts getting really crazy, multiple lines weaving through and on top of each other. You're going to wind up with kind of a best guess approximation.
Now, if you're using Rasta, just like Max said, you can't do much sizing with it. But the reason why I do 11 by 17 is because Rasta images you can shrink and they hold together, not forever, but they hold together better if you make them smaller. So a comic book page of 6 3/4 by 10 1/2, I take my 11 by 17, shrink it down and get it to fit inside there, and it holds the integrity of the artwork. But if I was trying to go from a 6 by 10 to 11 by 17, I would get pixelation as it got bigger.
And Phil makes a good point. Clip does, for balloons and lettering, it does actually use vectors, but because the program is kind of trying to live in both worlds, you don't get as much manipulation over the vectors as you would with a vector-based program like Illustrator. So I'm not able to as easily draw multiple points on text and then manipulate that text the same way that I can in Illustrator. By focusing solely on vectors, Illustrator's just able to do that part of the job much better. And then that's where Photoshop comes in. Adobe Photoshop is a raster-based program, which a lot of artists will still use Photoshop. I think the Electric Crayon himself uses Photoshop, if I'm not mistaken. So kind of that same thing. If you're dealing with raster-based images, Photoshop can do a lot more than Clip Studio can. Where Clip Studio really works is that it takes away all the white noise, all the stuff that you wouldn't need for drawing art. And then it allows you to focus on just that. And the program, when you're doing artwork, is very smooth, very, very easy to use. And it's cheaper. More than enough. Cheaper. I think that's going to be a question for you there.
What's that?
Mr. Tony.
Oh, let me see here. Oh, this guy right here? How much do I have to...
Yeah, so that's for you, bro. That's all you. I'm not good enough for that mess.
This is your bandmate friend here? Okay.
Yeah, that's my boy Tony.
What's up, Tony? Well, no, I don't work in that. I mean, I can just look at it and help you out. I mean, we don't have to go that far. I prefer dinner and a movie if we're going to go that far.
Oh. Gotta work it. You gotta get the hustle on there, Warren. Yep. Tony's good people.
Good.
What I love about Tony is that he's not fake. Like plus we both have Final Fantasy VII tattoos. Like,
sorry.
Yeah, he's my boy. Like What's up, Pete?
Hi, Pete. Here, we've been showing my stuff here. You want me to show your screen here?
Yeah. I'm just throwing down like rough sound effects. I call them roughing in. I took that term from when I used to do electrical work. The first thing you do is you get the wires in the rough location, routed through your conduit wherever you need, and then like if I'm wiring up a panel, I got all bundle of spaghetti in there. That's roughed in, and then I can do that for all the panels in the whole facility and get all the wires there. And now I can go back and I can get into precision mode and start really making sure that my wires are routed properly, everything's aesthetically pleasing, all my terminations are secure. It's just a different type of work, right? Pulling wires, very much just brute force, get it done, and then land in a terminal or land in a panel and making everything look nice is more precision work. So I focus on a kind of a first pass through. I'll typically focus mostly on getting the dialogue where it's going to be, and then sound effects I'll just kind of throw something roughly in the idea of what I'm looking for, and I'll just sit on it and think about it, because there's some conventions for dialogue that you need to follow. You want like a book. We all in America here, we like to read from the left to right and top to bottom. So you want your balloons to follow that rough kind of pattern, right? If something is meant to be said in a specific order, it should follow a rough left to right, top to bottom layout. So you'll see, if you look online, you'll see like swooping kind of S curves that will show you how it's supposed to be laid out. So I'll focus on the dialogue and make sure that the dialogue is kind of following that path, that everything is being read in the right order, that I'm not blocking anything. And then I can come back and think about the sound effects later, because there's not many conventions for sound effects. This is really where you get to just kind of do your graphic design skills. You get to let your unique style show through in the page. There's, again, like the biggest convention that you'll see people follow with sound effects is that whatever the sound effect is, it should be a part of the thing that caused it. So, if you have an explosion and your sound effect is boom, your lettering the boom should show that, this is part of that explosion. It'll typically kind of swell out. And it can follow a three-dimensional perspective as well. If you want the letters to fly toward you, then obviously the closer ones are going to be bigger than the ones that are farther away. But beyond those kind of basic conventions, just making sure the sound effect is near the source and possibly being affected by the source, whatever colors you use, whatever, fonts, whether they're, pre-purchased fonts, like from Blambot, or Warren will do a lot of hand lettering. It's up to you. There's no rules there. So that's where I get something in and I'll think about it in the background as I'm working on the dialogue. And then I can start coming back to the sound effects later, get into that mindset and work at it. So, like I got this big orange bang here, and this may or may not be what I keep, probably not going to keep the color for sure, but the idea is there, right? Big bang. And then I got this kind of bloody splotch where my hero is getting shot. I like the sound effect splotch, there's no rules for onomatopoeia either. I think one of the most infamous sound effects in comics is the Brappa Lorch. Do you remember what that was from? It's from an Image book, right?
I'm not sure off the top of my head on that one.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. Is that Savage Dragon?
Oh, yeah, it sounds like a Savage Dragon.
It's a Savage Dragon. Yeah, the girl's name is Heavy Flow. So you can imagine what's happening. It's a pretty grotesque special superpower she has, but the sound effect for this is Brappa Lorch, which is like, who would ever think of that, but it works so well.
I've wanted to, because Sig does fourth wall breaks, but I've been kind of keeping it just verbal. So he to that world, he just sounds crazy, but he kind of knows what's going on. But I wanted to do it, but I don't know if I ever will. It was where he like punches somebody, and then there's the sound effect with an exclamation point. Then he grabs the exclamation point and uses it like to stab somebody else. I thought about but I don't know if I should break that much. I have thought about doing stuff where like if Joe, this is old proto Sig and Joe. I drew one where Joe was being thrown by one of the bad guys, and when he hit the panel wall, he was breaking through the panel wall and into the next panel, and it was just stuff along those lines to kind of bring it all in there. But yeah. I don't know if that would be too much of a fourth wall break, because if you go too much, then it's kind of weird. But at the same time, I thought it would look cool.
I think it'd be cool. We should try it. I mean, there are no rules, right? It's just comics.
We are going to do that one in issue 4 when Sig shoots and Joe says, "Oh shit!" It's the bullet's going to go through the balloon and like through the word "shit," so it looks like it's just breaking apart. I still plan to do that.
See, that's cool. I'm more proud of this particular sound effect than I should be, but I love this one. This was the guy's getting hit in the face with a brick, and I'm like, the word brick kind of sounds like what would happen. So I'm just like, hey, like it works. It looks good. It sounds good. And it also tells you what's happening, right? So I just want to take a moment and appreciate Joe's artwork and Warren's grayscales. You know, these, man, Joe does such amazing work. And Warren just made it look much better. You know, it softens the white over the eyes, but you didn't take away from any of Joe's art. You didn't distract from it. You added to it, you know?
Yeah, it's just like the same philosophy that a colorist will do is adding to the art without taking away, just helping insinuate certain areas and making other stuff stick out well and along those lines.
But I have to give a big shout out to Mr. Joe Wong. He's the artist for Blue Water, and you know, when I'm crafting this story, there were so many blank spots in my mind. You know, what does Yancho's house look like? What does this thing look like? You know, how is the town laid out? These are all like, I had the details that I needed to tell the story, and the rest of it, I was like, I don't even know. And Joe comes in with his artistic vision and has the confidence to just step into that role. And he's like, this is Yancho's house. This is, you know, what the hat looks like that he wears. And this is the welcome to Blue Water sign. And every step of the way, I've seen what he's presented, and I'm like, that's it. That's great. You know, there's a lot of love and trust that I have for Joe. And I can't say thank you enough for, all the help that he's given me. And with that, I also want to give a shout out to Mr. Gino. I met Gino after I started working with Joe, and I met Joe, I want to say thanks to Brian Cole. He was the first real friend I made in comics, and I just was like, hey, I want to do this thing. I don't know what to do. You know, what do I do, guys? And Brian reached out and he got me in touch with Joe, and he's just given me so many tips and tricks along the way. And it's like all these stars just aligned. And I'm working with Joe, and he says, hey, my brother, you know, is looking for some work. Here's what he has. And again, I was just blown away. Like, I don't know what these guys, you know, what they're putting in the water over there, but, you know, Gino is just amazing.
Gino's work is well, Joe's work is beautiful too, but Gino's has, I really am a fan of Gino's work.
I don't even know how he does this stuff.
I see a lot of influences in his art. He's got a lot of energy. And his hashing is really like next level. He puts so much detail and work into his stuff. It's really beautiful.
And just the emotion, you know. I got a lot of love for you guys, Joe and Gino. I can't say enough. Thank you guys for everything. Shout out to Joe. Tony asks, am I conflicted about the story? What do you mean? I'm interested in that. You know, while I'm waiting for him to comment, I'll just kind of talk about, you know, why Blue Water, why this story. So this story has a lot of personal for me, you know. Oh, you got to build your characters and make them, you know, that's there are parts where like I mourn things that are going to happen, or I feel bad, and when I'm as a writer, I use that as kind of a litmus test. Like if I'm thinking about killing off a character, and I'm like, okay, who of all these characters I have, somebody's got to die here. Who's it going to be? And I don't care about him. I don't care about him. When I find the one that I'm like, no, I don't want him to die there, that's the one that's going to get killed because I feel that now there's an emotional like charge and connection and a sense of loss, and the only thing I can do is the only kind of approach I can have is if I feel this way, hopefully other people will sense that and they'll feel this way too. They'll care that much. So yeah, there's parts where I get conflicted, but I use that. That tells me I'm onto something. And that's the only thing we can hope for, is that if we care about it, other people will care about it half as much. But you got to do that with passion. Yeah, bro, our Final Fantasy tattoos. But yeah, I wrote this story. It's comes from a love of Western movies. I grew up with watching Western movies in New Mexico, and like Firefly is one of my favorite series, and I love film noir. I have a weird connection with like black and white, old, dark, gritty films. Um, and so that was kind of the aesthetic that I was drawn toward. But the plot of this story, Firefly was or is, I can see why people say that. Like looking at it, it doesn't age as well. Serenity, I will die on the hill that Serenity is a fucking crown jewel masterpiece of cinema. But I can get why people say that about the show. It hasn't aged well. It had a vibe to it, and it's the nostalgia for me.
The show didn't have time to mature, like for the actors to really get in, like a season or two to really start ramping up, and it had so much potential, but I just don't think it didn't have time.
I want to be Han Solo meets the A-Team. I mean, I get that. I do. I really do. But everything could be kind of like distilled to that. It's this meets this, but not as good. I really feel like Serenity is where it found its high water mark, and it was just a shame that was also the home stretch. But anyway, the catalyst for this story was when I was 8 years old. I was living in a town called Blue Water, New Mexico. So Blue Water is a real place, and my stepfather was cooking meth in our utility room, and he went ahead and burned our house down one night. I still remember that night pretty vividly, just watching Roseanne on TV, of all things, getting ready for bed, and then the house is on fire. And so, as you can expect, like that was a huge uprooting of my life, and in no short order, I was living in Idaho with my dad, and I didn't understand like the gravity of what had happened at the time. But yeah, I was growing up in a meth lab, and it got on fire. And so the lesson I learned from that is that you don't need to be the one doing drugs to have your life affected by them negatively, and this is no way to judge anybody who's dealing with addiction or anything like that. But it was just the fact. I was, subjected to that as a kid and affected by it. And that's sort of the core moral here in Blue Water. The whole story kicks off with a robbery at the pharmacy, which turns into this larger conspiracy, and we as the reader follow Sheriff Yancho as he starts out investigating this robbery and slowly unfolds more and more of this conspiracy that involves drugs. And along the way, his own mindset about drug use is challenged, and it ultimately is changed along the way. But from Yancho's perspective, it's all about protecting his town, right? and he watches as his town devolves into, a ghetto, despite his best efforts to prevent this. The wheels just start turning, drugs start coming up in the streets, and human nature takes over, and he's powerless to stop it. But that's the true tragedy for Yancho, is his failure to protect his town and having to come to terms with that. And we as the reader see how all these different people are affected along the way. And yeah, it does. There's a lot of violence,
The good stuff.
Yeah, you gotta. I like action, man. I like that stuff. So, but there's, you gotta write what you know, and that was an experience that I had. That's something I lived through, and there's some lessons to learn from that. So, without trying to preach too much, that it was from that place that this story kind of unfolded. Hi, Madre. Kimberly is my mom, and I love her. She's an awesome lady. She's done so much. She everybody says their mom's the best, but my mom's the best, and
I'll
fight you about it. So write what you know. If it's true to you, it's gonna ring true for somebody else. And from there, I've always been a believer in the opinion that Leo Tolstoy put out, that all of literature is one of two stories. Somebody goes on a journey, or a stranger comes to town. And so if you strip away all the noise, we're all telling the same two stories, or a combination of those two. And so if the story is always the same, then it's the characters that really breathe life into the story. So you start with what you know. That gives you, your rough plot outline. And then you start focusing on those characters. And when you're developing characters, it's kind of that same thing. Go by what you know. The people that you have met, they can all influence a character's personality. All of us are so dynamic. There's days where we're happy-go-lucky, and there's days where we don't want to talk to anybody, and everything in between, right? So, you know those experiences, and you can pour them into your characters. And it sounds really trite, but when you've built a living, breathing character, there's a cast of flawed and human and varied characters with their own motivations and their own ideas, the story writes itself. You are just listening to these characters. If you do that part right and really build out who your characters are, they'll tell you what the story is, because you know how they're going to react to any given situation. Remember talking with Warren, and like the go-to prompt I always loved is, what would your character do if they were all alone and they came upon a box of kittens on the side of the road?
Yeah, I remember this.
This is the kind of stuff that might not ever make it into the story. But if you know these things about your characters, they'll tell you what happens in the story.
I actually added it to issue 2.
Yeah. the free box kittens is his response to this very prompt that I gave to Warren back in the day. What would Sig do if he found a box of kittens, and how is that different than what Joe would do if he found a box of kittens? But those are the sorts of questions you ask. I mean, it can be, what color underwear do these guys wear? What's their favorite color? Are they a smoker? Are they a drinker? Have they ever been in a fight? Did they graduate from high school? None of this stuff has any real bearing on the story itself, but it has a bearing on those characters. And if you know that shit, you know your characters. And then you're making something that's relatable.
All right, let's see here. We are streaming to my Twitter. I've been trying that out for the last 2 times, Pete. Twitch, which is you're on, and then my Facebook, Max's Facebook, and then also our Daily Grind Press YouTube, which should be, well, it's not, it's in the chat, but it's also just Daily Grind YouTube / Daily Grind Press, and that's where you'll find our YouTube. I'll put some links up later too. I need to start promoting that more. And
we are building out,
with you,
my man. We are building out our website, dailygrindpress.com. It's still a little bare bones because Warren is the only one who's actually finished a book. But I'm working on it. I'm trying. We got a lot in the works, so we're just going to keep slowly turning the wheel forward. But he's got a Creator Spring store. You can see my Sig and Joe bandana right there.
Yes, I have my Sig and Joe shirt on. Hold on.
So yeah, and you can find that in our website. You can buy a digital copy of Warren's book, issue 1 of Sig and Joe for $1.99. And yeah, we're going to keep adding digital copies of all of our issues as they're finished, and we're building up our physical inventory for things like conventions, and then any overstock will also be available on the website.
I will make sure to do that, Pete. All right. Splotch. I like that one. All right, we're going to switch over so we can see here. Are you all good for me to switch over? Or?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's see here. Oof. So I got a pass done on this page, and I'll probably... This is borderline. Usually I like to be a little bit more fine-tuned than this before I go to inks, but I am going to... I'm going to keep it at this, and then because I still have like another 15 pages to do, so I'm going to keep it at this level, and then I'll come back to it and go over it with ink. Let's see here. Now, for if you're writing a story, Max, in your opinion, how much do you like to have figured out before you start your first page? So, like, do you go in depth and do character profiles on all the mains, or are you getting an outline and kind of going as you go, or like what's the level of prep that you like to do?
That's actually a great question, and I have I'm experimenting with both extremes, if you will. So Blue Water is a story that I have been crafting and tooling for probably 8 years now. I started with my rough outline, but the nature of the detective story is that there's all these layers. There's things that the reader knows. There's things that Yancho knows. There's things that all the other characters know that both the reader and Yancho are yet to learn that need to be referenced. And so things are happening, on issue 50 that are being referenced in issue 3, so it's a very precision piece of machinery, and I've had to it's taken me a long time to do that. And of course, as life goes on, I get new ideas and stuff, but so Blue Water is definitely like a Swiss watch at this point. I've done my level best to make sure all those little interweaving plot points are connected. Wavelight, on the other hand, is kind of like my love letter to shonen manga. That's what I call it, you know. And for anyone who might not know, shonen manga is Japanese comic books that are geared toward teenage boys. So this is your Dragon Ball and your Neon Genesis Evangelion and your My Hero Academia and your Demon Slayer. It's usually there's definitely a lot of action, and there's a focus on personal growth, being an underdog with grit and determination is a common theme. And so that's kind of a different story, you know. I'm having to make sure that I keep this age appropriate, both with the things that are being depicted on screen and the dialogue that's being spoken. So there's no swear words in Wavelight. And the other thing that you'll find as you start reading certain manga is how very just sort of open-ended the story will just go and go and go for hundreds of issues. You know, favorite example of this is in the Frieza saga of Dragon Ball Z, where they're fighting this arch nemesis, like ultimate badass, this guy named Frieza, and they're trying to protect an alien planet called Namek because he's trying to destroy it. So he's pretty basic premise, right? Except no, because Frieza goes through multiple transformations along the way, and they build those up for dozens of issues at a time. So the fight hasn't even really started until he becomes his final form, right? I mean, there's a lot that happens along the way. It's not fair to say that the fight hasn't started, but you know,
Well,
it's
yeah.
it's all spectacle and a fair amount of fluff. And then you get to the end of it, and then he's like, "Oh no, I'm not done yet. I might be at my final form, but now I'm at 100%." And his muscles just swell up, and the fight continues for several dozen more issues. Right? They're masters of building out and suspense and that anticipation, and it's a tricky balancing act, you know. Because it can just go too long, and that's filler. But if you hit that right amount, you know, like a lot of fight sequences in One Piece have like perfected that sense of pacing. But then there's other ones that go way too long, and ultimately we're talking about a story that's like over 1,000 issues at this point, and it still hasn't been finished. So, I'm also trying to strike that balance. So with Wavelight, it's not this perfectly constructed Swiss watch. I'm definitely operating off of an outline. You know, I've got my beginning, I've got all these major milestones that happen along the way, and I know how the story is going to end. But everything that happens in between those milestones, I'm treating that like a bridge I'll cross when I get to it. How many issues between this milestone and that milestone is going to be how I feel in the moment. So yeah, I'm trying both extremes, and I can't say which one I prefer, you know. You don't want to spend 8 years working on one story. There's a lot of analysis by paralysis there. So there was some mistakes and just dropping the ball and not working hard enough along the way there. But you wanna have a coherent story, you know. You definitely don't want to make any major plot holes. But if you spend all of your time analyzing everything and planning and preparing, you're never actually going to do anything.
Yeah.
You know, and like we have been talking about earlier, you know, the writing is a skill, and that skill develops with practice. So your first books are going to suck. Your next books are going to suck, you know. I have written so many short stories and screenplays and stuff that has just wound up in the garbage bin as an English major that, you know, there's a lot of hard-learned lessons that I'm applying to, you know, even these first issues. But if you're not if you don't have those decades of being an English nerd behind you that where you've been practicing writing prose and poetry and all this stuff, your first comic publishing is gonna suck. But it's so important that you do it anyway.
Well,
And
you
then
learn from it.
yeah,
Honesty is the biggest. Honesty in your own work is the biggest help of moving forward. Being able to look critically at your own work, not beat yourself up, but being able to say, okay, I'm not hitting what I need to do here. I need to work on this story, going through. Just for 1 sec here, Pete would love to ask a favor if he'd like to hear what you think of his Sig and Joe variant cover.
Oh, you did this, Pete? That's awesome, man.
This is the Pete Vasquez variant for Sig and Joe issue 1. It's going to be available on the Kickstarter that should be doing in April, and he'd like to know what you think.
Did he do the colors as well?
He did everything. This is all him. One thing I gave him was the Lunchbox comics and the Adventures of Sig and Joe header, and then he did the rest. I love it.
What I've always loved about Pete's work is that he does multimedia. He'll put like markers on painted canvas and pencils and you do stuff that I would never think to do. And even if this is all digital, like that has translated here. I almost feel like this the space background, the void over the planet, is like really, really good Photoshop work, and then I feel like you drew the planet on there with watercolor, and then I feel like Sig and Joe were done with started as 2 drawings. See, that's dude, it's that multimedia style that you have is killer. I love how they've got the ISS back there.
Yeah. He figured out how to get Joe a space outfit here, since Joe has the worst body for clothing that I've on any character ever created.
Yeah, no, and I like how they're coming out of the shuttle.
I love the smoke from Sig going into the pipe.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yep.
Oh, because he's got the helmet on.
Yep.
I love Sig's face too.
Oh, like yeah.
It's this really goofy. It's somehow more goofy. It's the crap mask and it's the bubble. No, I love it. I really do. If this was something you did for me, I'd be perfectly happy with it. To offer some constructive criticism, I do think that some of the shadows, like on the ISS, where the modules meet, it doesn't quite have the darkness and the depth that I would expect. And then another thing is with Joe's body, it appears kind of flat. Like I couldn't tell you how to improve on it, because Lord knows I couldn't do, I couldn't hold a candle to what you're doing here, man. But it does seem like there's a bit of flatness to Joe. I would expect to see him actually kind of come behind and be a little more three-dimensional. And Warren might be able to offer some insight on how you could work on that. But those are 2 things that I would say you could focus on working on, doing some drills on just getting the depth of those shadows in the really dark spots, and then working on the three-dimensional aspect of things kind of coming behind. You nail it on the ISS. Like I really believe that those are cylinders going on, but there's something about the way that Joe got rendered that makes him look kind of flat to me.
But it's a hard shape and hard pose to pull off, and you do have. I'm not drawing on it. I'm going to draw kind of over here. So, and you do have the arc here, and the arc here showing the 3D of Joe's body. What would probably help out and is like, okay, so here's the mask. What I would do is I would have overlapped this on the mask, but not this one. And the reason being is that the mask is kind of like it has kind of a roundness to it because it fits over the nose and the mouth. So then you would probably move this center point over just a little bit to give and I would have probably put a line like that down the nose area, and then maybe put a little bit more shading over here. Just little tiny stuff like that, and it'll give it much more of the illusion of being three-dimensional. And then you could on the goggles, which hold on here. The goggles, which are a lot harder to pull off, is I would have probably put a little bit more of a curve, and then maybe put something extra on the side, and then had this over here like that, and then over here like so, and then it gives it a bit more of that 3D look by just adding just sort of moving the whole thing over a little bit and then putting this side on here. But it's hard to do, and make it look right no matter what. But
yeah, I couldn't come close to that, Pete. And I definitely want to reiterate that this is awesome. I really love this, man. I don't know how to describe it. It's the multimedia stuff that you do. It's just, it gives everything this texture that I don't see anybody else doing. Your work, I'm like, that's something Pete did, because it's like Photoshop and drawn pencils on watercolors, and like your paintings are just amazing, dude. Definitely keep it up. I would kill to be half the artist that you are, Pete. I truly would, man.
Oh shit, yeah. Hold on one second, I'll pull that up too. I see what you're talking about with the shadows and not wanting it muddled in the back, which is a good point. Let's see here. Let me pull that up real quick. I forgot. Pete also did a pinup on the inside of Sig and Joe issue 1, along with, let's see here, one. Oh no, I need to go to issue 1. Where's that?
And I love how he captured like this whimsical nature. Like there's a lot of heavy stuff in Sig and Joe, but like at the end of the day, it's a coffee cup and a cigarette running around, in space, and like there's just so much goofiness and fun, and he's kept that. Oh, what?
Yeah, now this is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, I got no notes on this, dude. This is insane.
Yeah, this is absolutely beautiful.
Even this has that multimedia texture to it. Like Sig and Joe both look like you drew them with pencil, and then you shaded it with like a grayscale marker, and then the background looks like a Jackson Pollock painting. And then it's like you took a ballpoint pen and drew this octopus, and then you went back over that and added even more paint texture. Like, my gosh, dude.
That's a good point. That's a good thing to know, Itchy. I might stop going to Twitter if it is too much of a pain, and might just stick with the YouTube and Facebook and Twitch.
It's an ink drawing and shaded like that, ink and water splashes in the background and rendered in Procreate. Dude, I don't even know how you thought of this.
Oh yeah, this is great.
Because like you started with a blank page, and then you pulled this out of your head, and man, I want to get that tattooed. Like I want that as a full back piece. No joke. If I didn't already have a bunch of scratch work on my back, I would do that for sure. Maybe I can get it covered up. I have some old catfish tattoos on my back, and they did not age well. Oh, it's the chowder squid and yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Bro, that is like That is like Mama Chowder Squid right there, coming to protect her babies.
Yeah, I haven't even designed what the chowder squid looks like. We will get to see that though. That'll be in one of the future issues.
And now I'm thinking about the giant skull. Like, what was that?
Well, it's the waste can full of all sorts of sci-fi craziness, so that could have been anything.
It's a behemoth, man. Whew. It's like one of King Kong's brothers or something.
Yes, ink wash is looking good. There you go. All right. Well, hey, Max, it is 6:42, and I know that we both couldn't be on for too long, so you want to start doing a wrap-up, or?
Yeah. We'll try to keep them more within the ballpark. 2 hours. I think that's a good thing we can shoot for. So
above Stig is the lighter. The octopus has a lighter right there.
Oh, and Sig is not having a good time. Yeah, you're about to get smoked there, buddy.
Oh yeah, we will fix that itchy 5 on the website.
Thank you,
make sure,
thank you, Ixie. Yes, sir. I appreciate that.
All right, so let me come back over here, and
I love the idea of like something that's like so powerful that it's just like its morning is going to be smoking Sig and drinking Joe. It's just like, yep, it's going to be a good day, wreaking havoc on the world.
All right, guys. So we're only going to be going this for 2 hours tonight. If we can, we'll come back on tomorrow if everything works out schedule-wise. Also, too, I'm going to start doing probably some more like random late-night draw streams, but this will be like 10, 11 o'clock my time on the West Coast, so that could be super late. But yeah, we're going to be showing more. We're going to be going more to our YouTube. We're going to be creating how-tos, how to plot a story, how to use 1, 2, and 3 point perspectives. We're going to be talking about our process, how we create, how we get our stories, how we get our ideas onto paper, and we'll be doing a lot more of that in the future. Make sure you check out our good friend Pete at Pete11717. That is where you're going to find him on all the social medias. For myself, just look up Lunchbox Warren. If you put that into any of the major ones, I'll pop up. And for you, Max, it's Fun Guy Comics.
Fun Guy Comics, yes, sir.
Also, Ixthith, I always say Itchy 5, and I know it's Ixthith. Ixthith is another great look. Make sure you look him up. He is another great colorist, and he also does some good live streams as well as Pete. Both are great artists to follow. And
your beard is killer.
It is. Thank you.
So jealous. You're such a sexy bastard. I'm pissed off. Oh, I love you too, Madre. I know. I can't. This is what I got. It ain't nothing. Warren's over here with the samurai top.
Oh, I got a whole like cabinet of stuff just to make this do this. But yeah, make sure to hit us up, dailygrindpress.com. We'll be getting more and more stuff onto there.
Hey,
check us out on social medias. Hey, what's up, Chuck?
Shout out to Chuck Pinot, man. This guy is just one of the nicest people I've ever met. His work is great. He has been a big help for helping me find confidence in this world and teaching me some of those really necessary conventions with dialogue. And yeah, check out Chuck.
Also check out good friend Phil Leon, Philman X, another great colorist. He also did all of the color work for my variants. Pete did the coloring for his own variant, but on all the variants I have, the Batman and the standard, I'll actually show those next time. We were kind of short on time this time, so tomorrow if we get back on, I'll show off all of Phil's colors. But check out Philman X, check out Pete11717, check out Ixthis. Check out Chuck Pinot for not only his own great writing, but also for his amazing editorial work. And you guys have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful night.
Thank you all. We love you guys.